welcome to the Kelly Roach Show, a place for no fluff, easy to implement, 20-minute or less business and leadership lessons to help you build a sustainable business that scales. Let's get started. All right, welcome back to the Kelly Roach Show. So excited to be here today with Scott Hallman. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to do this.
Yes, excited to have you here. So he's known as the man behind the legends. And Scott, you have been working with some of the greatest business leaders of all time for a long, twisting, turning career. And you have helped lead and grow companies through the recessions, through the crashes. You have had an Inc. 500 company multiple times at the very top of the list, which is very exciting. So excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you. By the way, with all those things said, it's never easy. So, there's ups and downs in everybody's life and career and what we all deal with.
Isn't that the truth? Okay, well, listen, Scott, so since I have you here, we have been in a contracting economy since January. And a lot of people are just now realizing we are in a recession. The recession is here. As leaders, I actually think leading through a time of contraction is actually really important from a skill building standpoint. I actually think it's really important to develop the capability as a CEO to lead through all different types of environments. And so I would love if you would share some of the principles behind kind of the business optimization work that you do, because I know a lot of the work that you do, you're really focused on helping companies kind of identify the hidden dollars that already exist, that they're not tapping into. And I think that's going to be really important in this next season. So
I think it's more important than ever. So just to go backwards, I started my first business in the worst recession since the Great Depression. It was the double dippers, they called it, and double-digit inflation as well. And I think that the vast majority of people likely listening to this podcast have never run a business during high inflation, and they maybe never ran a business during a recession, right? That was 13 years ago. We're the longest non-recessionary time, I think, if I have my facts straight, in the history of the U.S., bolstered by all of this crazy stimulus money. So we get lulled into being comfortable. We get lulled into business being easy. And I'm not saying there aren't businesses that, the COVID economy really hit them, but many businesses benefited from the whole COVID economy. And it's just sort of business has been relatively easy for many. And if you're not one of those, by the way, please don't take offense, but it's what I find across the board. And so, what happens is, as you talked about last time with, what did you say, fairy tale versus reality? I like it. It was good. It is that there's a lag factor. So, we've been in this down economy since January, but many businesses still aren't feeling it yet because we're still dealing with all the stimulus money and ERC money and PPP money and you name it, money. But when it happens quick. If you remember back in the Great Recession, they called it 2008, 9, and I would argue 10. It happened really rapidly. I had a client go from $4 million a month to $800,000 a month in a matter of months. And so it happens quick. So the main thing is, when I started my first business, I was fresh out of college. I had no money. So I no other option but to make it work. And I had gone through the whole E-Myth training with Michael Gerber and, started, putting all the systems in place. And what I realized is that was my secret sauce. That's how I made it through this challenging economy. Needs every dollar out of everything we did, right? Because there's people out there, we need to hire that key person or persons. We need to have the cutting edge technology. We want to have money to spend on marketing, especially when it gets more expensive. But where's the money come from? And for me, I learned what I teach now more out of necessity than, because it was some strategic thing. It was just what I had to do. And now when this turn happens, and I can't emphasize how quickly it happens, you better have your saw sharpened. You better have your systems in place, like you talk about, because if you do, you are in an incredible position to dominate going forward. And if you don't, you're going to be in trouble quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's try to give, and to your point about how fast it happens, I was leading in the staffing industry, which I know you've worked with the staffing industry as well during the 2008, 2009 crash. And we literally had customers calling in full on panic, cutting dozens of jobs in a 30-second phone call. And the phone was ringing off the hook. And within 1 week, I mean, millions and millions of dollars of business completely dissipated. And in a week. So to your point about how fast it happens. And I think that is why, and I talk so much on the show about this, and I would be interested in your feedback on this, businesses have to be in the habit of consistently producing new revenue in a variety of ways, because your existing revenue can disappear overnight. And if you're riding those customers that you've always had, those customers that have been with you for years, those referrals that have been coming in, and all of a sudden that gets cut off, you have to have a mechanism for going out and generating new dollars really quickly.
Yeah, and it's real easy to get stuck in being comfortable. I like one of my clients was Chet Holmes, and they generated all their leads from radio, right? And he really perfected the whole system. But then radio dried up, and it's tough to pivot in that situation. Right now, that new analogy is Facebook for many businesses, right? We saw that, the algorithms got changed, what the impact was, and, it can change really quickly. So you definitely need to look at other sources of lead generation so that you're more diversified.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when you're talking to a business about some of the most important things that they should be reinforcing, like right now, given the environment that we're in, what would be maybe like the top 2 or 3 things that you would want every business owner that listens to this show to really be focused on to be prepared to lead through this? Yeah,
I'll give you 3 of them that come to mind right away. One of them is, it may be counterintuitive, but you have to lock in your best people. Right now, what ends up happening is we panic, and the staffing company calls you up and just starts whacking people, right? And we've experienced how difficult it is to be able to find, keep, and retain, right? And retain people. So you need to lock your best people in. And now this is an inflationary comment. So I had one of my clients say to me, these greedy people, they're constantly coming for more money. So let me put things in perspective.
Yeah.
You have somebody who makes $50,000 a year. I don't care if they say inflation's 8.9%, it's a bunch of crap. Inflation is probably 15%. If you can find what food didn't go up more than 10%, what gas didn't go up, so on and so forth. It's just the way they've manipulated the data. What that means is this $50,000 person's spending power has gone down $7,500, right? If they're living paycheck to paycheck, or even comfortable putting a little bit of money away, their lives are radically changed. So they're not being greedy. So the first thing you need to do is go in and rank your people and say, my top tier people, the kind of top grading thing, I'm actually going to create incentives and programs that will basically lock them in. It sounds like a bad term, but it's just really incentivize them to be with me in the long run, because they're who you're going to need. You cannot replace that experience. And if you cut too deep, you're going to have a hard time coming back. So that would be one. Number 2 is you need a plan B. And what I mean by that is, I have all of my clients create a spreadsheet that says, here's where we are right now. And I say to them, what if your business revenue dropped in half? Right? So it's advanced exercises going through and say, well, here's how we would be. Here's the shifts and pivots we would make, and we would be okay. That's the goal. How can you create the financials so you're okay? If you're too heavy in your overhead, you need to shift that dramatically. And the last one, which will surprise you, is you have to optimize. And what I mean by that, and it's such an overused term, when I used to talk about optimization years ago, people said, optimize SEO stuff. I go, no, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about, identifying what I call your profit drivers. You generate leads in a variety of ways, and then you take them through your sales funnel. And there's each of those steps are called a profit driver, because they can be measured and they can be improved and stacked on top of each other. Even small 3 to 5% improvements can lead to 25, 50% increases in revenue. And during a recession, I think you said it on one of the podcasts I listened to, it may not mean, when you go through those seasons, it may not mean your revenue goes up 25 or 50%. It may mean it doesn't go down 25 or 50%, right? So this is part of sharpening the saw, is going back and saying, how are we doing? I'm just on the phone with one of my long-term clients that I stopped working with, and they just have come back years later. And we were talking. He said, I'm embarrassed. I said, why am I embarrassed? He goes, because you're now bringing up all the things that we knew, all the things we used to do, but we haven't done. We kind of got off our game.
Yeah.
I go, well, then get back on your game, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's foundational stuff that you get away from it, especially when the market is easy and when it's easy to kind of skate on the surface of things. And then when the climate shifts, you have to really dig back in again to reinforce that foundation, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. So when people say they're going to hire this super successful sales manager to come into their organization because they're going to now come and sell. They're not necessarily a sales person, but they say this person's been a VP of sales or sales manager. I always take them through a process. Say, be careful, because a lot of times what happens, not all the time, and I'm not saying I don't want to put anybody in a bucket here, but a lot of times what happens is they've removed themselves so much for the actual battle in the street, so to speak, or in the trenches, they can't re-engage. And so if you're an entrepreneur and, you delegated everything out and you're traveling a lot, and God bless you, because that's the name of the game. But, the one thing about a true entrepreneur and how an entrepreneur is different than a CEO is the entrepreneur built the business. They did everything in the business. And when needed, they can dive back in.
They'll step back in. Yeah. It's really interesting that you said that, because number one, I've had that experience and had to actually terminate people that were not able to understand the balance of leading and also modeling the way for their team, right? And as a sales manager, your team needs to have someone to model. They need to be able to see someone who is performing and executing and delivering, that they can say, hey, let me show you how this works, right? That hip to hip coaching. Yeah. And it's a very unique person that both has developed effective leadership skills and also understands the importance of the hip to hip coaching and is willing to continue to engage. And you're right, a lot of people in a sales management role do not want to do that or can't find their way back to it, right? Yeah. But to that point, I'm actually seeing that quite a bit with a lot of entrepreneurs right now that are struggling to pivot back into the things that they had graduated out of in an easier market that now need to be pivoted back into. And I think it's really important. It's a reminder for all of us as entrepreneurs, that we have to be willing and ready to roll up our sleeves and do whatever needs to get done, right? In order to keep things moving. And it looks different in every season. Right?
In every season. Yeah, it's a good point. Well, I take clients through a process I call walking the farm. And it was after a duck farmer that I had that used to get frustrated because, there were all these problems, and then he delegated and he'd come back and find more problems. And if you want to do an exercise in advance, walk the farm. What's that mean? It means dive into each department, dive into each area. If you have a call center, go in and listen to the calls. If you're doing marketing, you go in and look. If you have an operations, just go and spend some time operations. So it's always interesting when a key person that's in one of those departments quits or they go on leave, and the entrepreneur dives back in and goes, "What the hell's going on here?" Right? So if you've removed yourself so much, even if should say that if you want to remove yourself, you live the dream of delegating and what we all dream of doing in our businesses, make sure you're at least keeping you're doing that review of each of the areas so that you know what's going on, so that when you finally have to dive back in, you're not going to be shocked,
Yeah, no, for sure. That makes total sense. So what are some of the other things that you think, businesses really need to be thinking about right now, given the time that we're in this moment of this recording?
Well, I think it is, as I mentioned about the plan B, I think is really important. So I don't, not to be redundant, but I think it's really, really important just to be able to begin planning ahead. I think the other thing is right now, and I think one of the main things right now in an inflationary environment is pricing and, pricing and inventory. So, costs are going up dramatically, and it's a silent killer. You think about it, you make a 10% profit, which is a good net profit for a business after all expenses, before taxes, and inflation goes up 10%, and you don't raise your prices or adjust how you're buying or reduce your discounts. They call it net price. It's what you actually get. And your profit's completely wiped out. And it just happens. You just have that old crap moment where, oh my God, where'd my profit go? So One of the things that was challenging after that great recession that impacted you and impacted me and impacted so many businesses, people were afraid to raise their prices. And I talk about raising prices. No.
Yeah.
And now everybody gets that you have to do that. So if you are still hesitant and you haven't raised prices, you need to find a way to be able to do that because your profits will be gone. And so it is really, really critical. We teach several concepts about this. One of them is about psychologically acceptable pricing, where you sort of create this pricing that doesn't appear to be more expensive, but you actually have raised your prices, but you have to find a way to be able to get your prices up. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. I call it net price. So if you're a pizza and you sell your pizzas for $20, but you always have $10 coupons, your actually price is $10. And whatever that average between people who use coupons and not use coupons might be 15. And if that's how you operate, I'm fine with that. But when times get tough and your prices and your costs are going up, your pizza's still $20, you can either raise your price of your pizza or you can reduce your discounting. I always laugh and go, why does it have to be 2 for 1? Well, why can't it be, or why does it have to be 20% off? Why can't it be 17% off? 17 kind of sounds more authentic anyway, and you just picked up 3%. So the next thing would be around pricing, because it is the thing that will just wipe you out, faster than anything.
It's so true. And, especially because there's a lot of creep right now with vendors where like they're increasing pricing and like you said earlier, I mean, if you're talking about a 10% margin, if a business has a 10% margin and you do nothing, and your vendors just ride the wave of inflation, I mean, there you go, right? So that's a really, really good reminder for everyone. I'm sorry, hold on one second. Reagan, we're going to have to pause the recording for 1 second. Hold on. Okay, so I think that's a great point that you just shared around the pricing analysis, and not just around pricing itself in like an isolated way, but really the whole scope of your expenses, your pricing, how inflation is impacting your cost structure, and what that means for the way that you're going to market. I think that's a really smart point. I think that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you have seen businesses make going through this process? What are some of the things that are kind of let's try to avoid this or not do that?
Yeah, I went through it in my business in the early 80s. I went through all each of the recessions. Obviously, I built $1 billion value company in 2000 and watched things crumble overnight, which was a crazy time. And in 2007, 2008, and I will tell you consistently what happens is businesses bury their head in the sand. And what I mean by that is they stop doing what got them where they are.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't have to pivot. It's not that you have to do anything different, but also they stop marketing. They're just going to wait for it to be over. Yeah. And there's going to be some savvy business entrepreneur who's just going to keep going. I had an IBM reseller, in the Great Recession that he said he told me, I don't know, he had some industry thing that said, I think the average reseller was down 82% or something. And I just kept telling him, just keep marketing. He did physical newsletters and some other things. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. He never stopped. Now, did his revenue go up dramatically? No, but it didn't drop very much, right? Yeah. And when he came out of the recession, who do they know?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's so interesting because we have a client who had launched a travel business right before the pandemic. And we all know what happened there, right? So his business went literally to zero. No one's traveling, right? And we coached him to do the same thing. We're like, keep marketing, keep marketing, keep marketing. And I know you listen to the show, Ryan, so you hear me talking right now. But as soon as things open up, I mean, his business just exploded, right? Yeah. Because he kept marketing, he kept doing the fundamentals, he kept executing when so many other businesses they pull back, they stop, they shut it down. So I think that's a really good reminder for everyone. And unfortunately, I have a feeling that this particular situation is definitely going to be a multi-year event. So I do think that we all need to be thinking in multiple years strategically. There is no like wait and see, like this will be quick, like, oh, maybe it'll just be a couple months. Like I really feel strongly that this is going to be a multi-year event. So I think it's more about evolution of our businesses and pivoting the right way and finding a way to sustain and grow, maybe in a little bit of a slightly different way, right? But I think it's going to go on for long enough that an avoidance mechanism is not going to be helpful, because I don't think you can last. is kind of that's my personal opinion. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, Scott.
Well, I agree. I think that what's ended up happening is remember, we're in the longest time without a recession, or maybe the longest time in 50 years. And so that just means everything's going to be worse. And you can't, we're running out of dollars to print.
Yeah.
So I think it is. But now with that said, I want people to be excited that if you play the game properly, you sharpen your saw, you optimize, you keep your best people, you shift and pivot, you're going to have a lot of opportunity. For example, I have several, we have a division called Your Big Payday, and it's all about, helping companies either acquire other companies and build their company up, or to sell their companies. And so a lot of, my clients have gotten frustrated. They're going to try to buy a business that's worth X, and the person wants 2 or 3X. It's like, and it's crazy. The business has dropped in revenue by 20%. The owner is completely disconnected. They don't care. Because it's just like in a housing market when the prices are just crazy, right? And we saw that, by the way, in the housing market that hit in the Great Recession, the average price home in Arizona and Las Vegas, and it didn't drop 10 or 20%, dropped 50%. So there's going to be some buying opportunities, especially with baby boomers who are going to get hit hard with this, where you're going to be able to pick up competitors oftentimes for very little. I always tell the story in 2000, I was trying to hire this salesperson in my IT consulting company, and I offered him a package where he could make $600,000. This is back in 2000. He was going to bring a certain amount of business. Obviously, he had to perform, and he turned me down because he said, I want stock. I said, I don't give stock to salespeople. Your earning potential is unlimited, but I got people working for 2/3 of what they're worth because they want the big payday. And so he didn't take the job. Well, the market crashes. He comes back and works for me for commission only. And, so there's going to be some buying opportunities. There's going to be some incredible hiring opportunities. If in fact you got one eye that's looking out for pragmatic reality, and the seasons change, we got to adjust to it. And the other eye is constantly looking for, how do I grow? How do I expand? How do I make my business stronger in this marketplace as my competitors are not doing the things they're supposed to do? Because even if you just maintain, like Bob, the IBM guy did, when the market took off, his business soared, right? And it's an important lesson. By the way, nobody wants to hear this because, we don't get the shiny object. We don't get hey, just do this marketing program and everything will change.
Yeah.
And so, my one client calls me, it's all about the boring way to riches. I guess so, but right now it's reality. So take heed.
No, and I couldn't agree more. And I like to talk about it openly because I actually have found both in the crash in 2008 and 2009, we ended up pivoting the business and we soared. In the coronavirus, when the shutdowns happened, we had our best year in business. I like to talk openly about it so that people can prepare, because I believe that the people that lean in instead of leaning out will be the people who thrive, multiply, and duplicate during this season. So I don't want people to be scared. I want them to be prepared. And I want them to know, if you lean in and if you do the things that no one else is willing to do, you will get the results that no one else is able to get. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Yeah. Music players.
Yeah, for sure. So, just going through the seasons with so many different companies, helping your clients to exit, just all the different seasons that you have personally been through, what would be some kind of final pieces of parting advice that you would want to give to the listeners? And then I know you have some amazing resources to share also.
Yeah, I can't help but, the biggest challenge right now is, one of my clients was Tony Robbins. So he talks a lot about the pattern interrupt. And everybody needs a pattern interrupter. I know by you talking openly about this and the realities of it is a way to be able to do that. But it's like, I just encourage everybody to just shake yourself and understand this is happening. This is real, and you can either ignore it or you can take action. By the way, if I'm wrong, you got a better business, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Exactly. So
yeah.
That's the main thing. And it's the hardest thing to do. I talk to my clients about critical time. You have to carve out critical time, critical thinking time during the week. carve out an hour twice a week. And all you're going to do is sit down and ponder this question. What if this were to happen, what shift would we make? And just pick one topic. What shift would we make in personnel? What shift would we make in expenses? What shift would we make in marketing? What do we need to do in order to be able to get ourselves a little bit more financially flexible right now in this marketplace? And just it's an hour or two a week, and you'll at least have your rough outline of your plan B without too much pain.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's so smart. I mean, these are the fundamentals and the foundations, and they're the things that come with the wisdom of going through the seasons and learning how to thrive. So I love it. It's right in alignment with where I want to lead people right now that are listening to the show. I would love for you to share some of the tools and resources that you have available, Scott, because I know you really have led many people through these types of scenarios before. So share a little bit where people can connect with you and how they can learn.
If you go to scotthallman.com, and I set up a special page just for you and your listeners, so scotthallman.com/Kelly Roach. And it's, I have a couple free things. There's no selling or anything. I just want to give you tools that will help you to execute on what you're teaching, what I'm teaching. And I gave you a couple things. Number one is, I believe there's a lot of lessons in my book, The 7 Success Drivers to Hypergrowth, was number one on Amazon and Kindle. So I will give you an electronic copy of that, where I interviewed 12 CEOs, 12 founders, not CEOs, 12 founders that have been on the list 3 times or more, sustained growth through economies, through challenging times, right? In 12 completely different industries, online, offline. And I pull out all those learning lessons. I think you'll find that really valuable. It's pretty easy read. And then when I talk about profit optimization, if you're up for it, if you have 35 or 40 minutes in your life, I'm going to give you access to a simple model we start all of our clients out with. It's a mini version to make sure I'm fair with this, but it's going to show you how to populate a very simple profit blueprint where you will put in, very simple things about how to generate leads, et cetera. And it's going to show you how you can increase your profitability 20, 50, or 100%. And again, whether or not that's profitability you can use to invest in other things, or whether it's your ability to sustain during challenging times. It's 30, 40 minutes to just little bite-sized chunks. I give you bite-sized actions. And I think you'd find it really fun to do and enlightening.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing, Scott. We'll have all the links for you guys in the show notes down below, and definitely take action on these tools. It's a season of preparation right now. And when preparation meets opportunity, that's when amazing magic and miracles happen. So Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing, great tips, great feedback, and some real wisdom with the listeners. Appreciate you being here.
It was great. Thank you.
All right. Until next time, we'll see you back here soon. Thanks for listening.